Yo, what's up? What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael Music, and I have been reading Think and Grow Rich Live because this book is something that I have found some of the most successful people in the world have studied, and it's something that read once, and I was like, okay, I read this book and I didn't get rich, and so I learned this idea to read it over and over again, and next thing you know, things start clicking. And one thing about me is I just graduated from college, and I went from being a student to now really wanting to share this information because I got a degree in engineering. However, I think information from this book, Think and Grow Rich, is way more powerful than whatever I learned in engineering. So I will be continuing the chapter on persistence. And yeah, so a little backstory. The reason I like to read this book so much is because I had a mentor of mine who read this book every day for 60 years of his life. And I was like, okay, if someone's willing to dedicate 60 years of his life, and he was a truly, truly rich man, maybe I might as well start now and dedicate my life to reading this book. So yeah, this is definitely something that has a big impact on me. I'm gonna be continuing on chapter 9, persistence, and yeah, we'll go from there. So let's get right into it. All right, this is on page 223, persistence. As these lines are being written, I look up from my work and I see before me, less than a block away, the great hopes and mysterious Broadway, the graveyard of dead hopes, and the front porch of opportunity. From all over the world, people have come to Broadway seeking fame, fortune, power, love, or whatever it is that human beings are called for success. Once in a while, someone steps out from the long procession of seekers, and the world hears that another person has mastered Broadway. But Broadway is not easily nor quickly conquered. She acknowledges talent, recognizes genius, pays off in money only after one has refused to quit. Now we know he has discovered the secret of how to conquer Broadway. The secret is always inseparably attached to one word: persistence. The secret is told in the struggle of Fannie Hurst, whose persistence conquered the Great White Way. She came to New York in 1915 to convert writing into riches. The conversion did not come quickly, but it came. For 4 years, Miss Hurst learned about the sidewalks of New York, and from firsthand experience. She spent her days laboring and her nights hoping. When hope grew dim, she did not say, "All right, Broadway, you win." She said, "Very well, Broadway, you may whip some, but not me. I'm going to force you to give up." One publisher, the Saturday Evening Post, sent her 36 rejection slips before she broke the ice and got a story across. The average writer, like the average in all walks of life, would have given up the job when the first rejection slip came. She pounded the pavements for 4 years and to the tune of the publisher's no, because she was determined to win. Then came the payoff. The spell had been broken. The unseen guide had tested Fannie Hurst, and she could take it. From that time on, publishers made a beaten path to her door. Money came so fast that she hardly had time to count it. Then the moving picture men discovered her, and money came not in small change, but in floods. The moving picture rights to her latest novel, Great Laughter, brought $100,000, said to be the highest price ever paid for a story before publication. Her royalties from the sale of the book probably will run much more. Briefly, you have a description of what persistence is capable of achieving. Fannie Hurst is no exception. Wherever men and women accumulate great riches, you may be sure that they first acquired persistence. Broadway will give any beggar a cup of coffee and a sandwich, but it demands persistence of those who go after the big stakes. Kate Smith will say amen when she reads this. For years, she sang without money and without price, before any microphone she could reach. Broadway said to her, "Come and get it if you can take it." She did take it until one happy day, Broadway got tired and said, "Aw, what's the use? You don't know when you're whipped, so name your price and go to work in earnest." Miss Smith named her price. It was plenty. A way up in figures so high that 1 week's salary is far more than most people make in a whole year. Verily, it pays to be persistent. And here's an encouraging statement which carries with it a suggestion of great significance. Thousands, thousands of singers who excel Kate Smith are walking up and down Broadway looking for a break, without success. Countless others have come and gone. Many of them sang well enough, but they failed to make the grade because they lacked the courage to keep on keeping on until Broadway became tired of turning them away. Persistence is a state of mind, therefore, it can be cultivated. Like all states of mind, persistence is based upon definite causes. Okay, so we're saying that persistence is a state of mind. So, one thing that I learned from my mentor is there's three levels to everything. There's strategy, story, and state. And I will get more into it later on down the road because I don't want to get too much into it yet. But apparently, state is the most important out of those three. A lot of people really worry about the how to's. However, it's the state of mind. And persistence is a state of mind that you can cultivate. And like all states of mind, it is based upon definite causes. So we're going to go across all the causes of this state of mind known as persistence. So, A, definiteness of purpose. Knowing what one wants is the first and perhaps the most important step toward the development of persistence. A strong motive forces one to surmount many difficulties. 2, desire. It is comparatively easy to acquire and to maintain persistence in pursuing the object of an intense desire. 3, self reliance. Belief in one's ability to carry out a plan encourages one to follow the plan through with persistence. Self reliance can be developed through the principle described in the chapter on autosuggestion. D, definiteness of plans. Organized plans, even though they may be weak and entirely impractical, encourage persistence. E, accurate knowledge. Knowing that one's plans are sound, based upon experience or observation, encourages persistence. Guessing instead of knowing destroys persistence. F, cooperation. Sympathy, understanding, and harmonious cooperation with others tends to develop persistence. G, willpower. The habit of concentrating one's thoughts upon the building of plans for the attainment of a definite purpose leads to persistence. H, habit. Persistence is the direct result of habit. The mind absorbs and becomes a part of the daily experiences upon which it feeds. Fear, the worst of all enemies, can be effectively cured by forced repetition of acts of courage. Everyone who has seen active service in war knows this. Okay, so those are A through H, the definite causes of cultivating the state of mind known as persistence. So, as we go through understanding this book, that's something I definitely would love to touch upon again and again, because you can understand that once you have those factors in mind, those causes, then you will develop persistence, and that will ensure you essentially against any failure or any temporary defeat. Before leaving the subject of persistence, take inventory of yourself and determine in what particular, if any, you are lacking in this essential quality. Measure yourself courageously point by point and see how many of the 8 factors of persistence you lack. The analysis may lead to discoveries that will give you a new grip on yourself. Okay, now we're going to touch upon the symptoms of lack of persistence. Here you will find the real enemies which stand before you and noteworthy achievement. Here you will find not only the symptoms indicating the weakness of persistence, but also the deeply seated subconscious causes of this weakness. You study the list carefully and face yourself squarely if you really wish to know who you are and what you're capable of doing. These are the weaknesses which must be mastered by all who accumulate riches. Okay, 1. Failure to recognize and clearly define exactly what you want. 2. Procrastination with or without cause, which is usually backed up with a formidable array of alibis and excuses. So remember, going back to the lesson on decision, if you click on, I think it was a previous episode just recently, right before this, apparently, according to Napoleon Hill, procrastination and decision are exact opposites of one another. So if you really learn how to make a decision, and go all in with that decision, you will eliminate procrastination, and vice versa. If you don't know how to make a decision, you will procrastinate, and that will come upon with what Napoleon Hill is saying, a formidable array of alibis and excuses. So you'll make all these excuses on why you're not doing this and that, and why you're not getting that goal you desire. 3. Lack of interest in acquiring specialized knowledge. 4. Indecision, the habit of passing the buck on all occasions instead of facing issues squarely, also backed by alibis. 5. The habit of relying upon alibis instead of creating definite plans for the solutions of problems. 6. Self satisfaction. There is but little remedy for this affliction and no hope for those who suffer from it. 7. Indifference, usually reflected in one's readiness to compromise on all occasions rather than meet opposition and fight it. 8. The habit of blaming others for one's mistakes and accepting unfavorable circumstances as being unavoidable. Okay, that's a one that I actually underlined. The habit of blaming others for my own mistakes is a symptom of lack of persistence. And any unfavorable circumstance that I accept as being unavoidable is another symptom of that. Okay, 9. Weakness of desire. Due to neglect in the choice of motives that impel action. So if you have a weak desire, you're going to lack that persistent factor. So keep in mind how all these principles are actually described in this book that like I'm reading, like 8, like 1 through 9. I recognize different areas of the book I found another area where Napoleon Hill touched upon these. So keep in mind how intertwined while you read this book each factor is when you lack persistence. 10. Willingness, even eagerness, to quit at the first sign of defeat, based upon one or more of the 6 basic fears. So, like I said in a previous episode, we're going to go over the 6 basic fears later on in this book as we read through it. 11. Lack of organized plans, placed in writing where they may be analyzed. So, I underlined this one as well, because if my plans are not, this is a reminder to myself, if my plans are not organized and written out, then I may lack persistence. 12. The habit of neglecting to move on ideas or to grasp opportunity when it presents itself. 13. Wishing instead of willing. 14. The habit of compromising with poverty instead of aiming at riches. General absence of ambition to be, to do, and to own. 15. Searching for all the shortcuts to riches, trying to get without giving a fair equivalent, usually reflected in the habit of gambling, endeavoring to drive sharp bargains. And finally, 16, fear of criticism, failure to create plans and to put them into action because of what other people will think, do, or say. This enemy belongs at the head of the list because it generally exists in one's subconscious mind, where its presence is not recognized. See the 6 basic fears in a later chapter. Okay, so what does fear of criticism mean to you as you read this book? Do you care about what people think? Let's say you have an idea. Do you think about, oh, what are they going to think? Do you close your mind tightly to outside forces? And what does it mean to think to you when you think about what criticism of others is? Keep that in mind as we keep reading along. Let us examine some of the symptoms of the fear of criticism. The majority of people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to so influence them that they cannot live their own lives because they fear criticism. Huge numbers of people make mistakes in marriage, stand by the bargain, and go through life miserable and unhappy because they fear criticism, which may follow if they correct the mistake. Anyone who has submitted to this form of fear knows the irreparable damage it does by destroying ambition, self-reliance, and the desire to achieve. Millions of people neglect to acquire belated educations after having left school because they fear criticism. Countless numbers of men and women, both young and old, permit relatives to wreck their lives in the name of duty because they fear criticism. Duty does not require any person to submit to the destruction of his personal ambitions and the right to live his own life in his own way. People refuse to take chances in business because they fear the criticism which may follow if they fail. The fear of criticism in such cases is stronger than the desire for success. Too many people refuse to set high goals for themselves or even neglect selecting a career because they fear the criticism of relatives and friends who may say, "Don't aim so high, people will think you are crazy." So, have you ever had a goal that was way out there and was told by another person that, "Why are you thinking so big? Why are you not thinking normal?" And then how did you feel by conforming to that question that they may have asked you? When Andrew Carnegie suggested that I devote 20 years to the organization of a philosophy of individual achievement, my first impulse of thought was fear of what people might say. The suggestion set up a goal for me far out of proportion to any I'd ever conceived. As quick as a flash, my mind began to create alibis and excuses, all of them traceable to the inherent fear of criticism. Something inside of me said, "You can't do it. The job is too big and requires too much time. What will your relatives think of you? How will you earn a living? No one has ever organized a philosophy of success. What right do you have to believe you can do it? Who are you, anyway, to aim so high? Remember your humble birth. What do you know about philosophy? People will think you are crazy." And they did. Why hasn't some other person done this before now? These and many other questions flashed into my mind and demanded attention. It seems as if the whole world had suddenly turned its attention to me with the purpose of ridiculing me and into giving up all desire to carry out Mr. Carnegie's suggestion. I had a fine opportunity then and there to kill off ambition before it gained control of me. Later in life, after having analyzed thousands of people, I discovered that most ideas are stillborn and need the breath of life injected into them through definite plans of immediate action. Okay, so he says, I had the fine opportunity then and there to kill off ambition before it gained control of me. Later in life, after having analyzed thousands of people, I discovered that most ideas are stillborn and need the breath of life injected into them through definite plans of immediate action. What does immediate action look like to you? And what would you say is a start into creating definite plans for immediate action? The time to nurse an idea is at the time of its birth. Every minute it lives gives it a better chance of surviving. The fear of criticism is at the bottom of the destruction of most ideas which never reach the planning and action stage. Wow. Many people believe that material success is the result of favorable breaks. There's an element of ground for the belief, but those dependent entirely upon luck are nearly always disappointed because they overlook another important factor, which must be present before one can be sure of success. It is the knowledge with which favorable breaks can be made to order. During the Depression, W.C. Fields, the comedian, lost all his money and found himself without income, without a job, and his means of earning a living no longer existed. Moreover, he was past 60 when many men considered themselves old. He was eager to stage a comeback that he offered to work without pay in a new field called of movies. In addition to his other troubles, he fell and injured his neck. To many, that would have been the place to give up and quit, but Fields was persistent. He knew that if he carried on, he would get the break sooner or later. And he did get them, but not by chance. Marie Dressler found herself down and out with her money gone, with no job when she was about 60. She too went after the breaks and got them. Her persistence brought an astounding triumph later in life, long before the age when most men and women are done with ambitions to achieve. Eddie Cantor lost his money in the 1929 stock crash, but he still had his persistence and his courage. With these plus two prominent eyes, he exploited himself back into an income of $10,000 a week. Verily, if one has persistence, one can get along very well without many other qualities. The only break anyone can afford to rely upon is a self made break. These come through the application of persistence. The starting point is definiteness of purpose. So, so as I just read, what is the starting point to persistence? What do you need to focus on to start? Because remember, we can think about the end goal all we want, but what is one action step that you can take to start on your way to developing persistence? Examine the first 100 people that you meet and ask them what they want most in life, and 98 of them will not be able to tell you. If you press them for an answer, some will say security, many will say money, and a few will say happiness. Others will say fame and power, and still others will say social recognition, ease in living, ability to sing, dance, or write. But none of them will be able to define these terms or give the slightest indication of a plan by which they hope to attain these vaguely expressed wishes. Riches do not respond to wishes, they respond only to definite plans backed by definite desires through constant persistence. Okay, so keep in mind, what is the difference between a wish and a desire? Ask yourself that. And then I also want to ask yourself, what are the factors that make up a wish and what are the factors that make up a true burning desire that you're actually going to attain? And what does that mean to you? So I'm going to read this again because I thought these lines were extremely powerful. So basically, Napoleon Hill is saying that none of these people will be able to define the terms or give the slightest indication of a plan by which they hope to attain their vaguely expressed wishes. Riches do not respond to wishes, they respond only to definite plans backed by burning desires or definite desires through constant persistence. So, with that being said, what do riches respond to? I just said it, and I want you to think about it so that you can own it yourself on what riches respond to. Okay, finally, this is how I'm going to wrap up the chapter today. How to develop persistence. There are 4 simple steps which lead to the habit of persistence. They call for no great amount of intelligence, no particular amount of education, and but little time or effort. The necessary steps are, okay, so I'm going to boil down what Napoleon Hill is saying to 4 simple steps that if you study this page, is page 233, chapter 9 on persistence. If you study this 4 steps every single day for 30 days, you will have a new awareness of what persistence looks like and how to develop it. The necessary steps are 1. A definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment. 2. A definite plan expressing continuous action. 3. A mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. 4. A friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. Okay, so I'm going to repeat them again because I really want you to understand this. These 4 steps are on page 233, and it is essentially what is this whole book is essential to like creating these 4 steps. Even furthermore, Napoleon Hill says the entire purpose of the 13 principles of this philosophy is to enable one to take these 4 steps as a matter of habit. So what we're really trying to do, this is a common theme that I have found throughout Think and Grow Rich, is learn to really develop these money-making habits. And these 4 steps we want to implant as habits. So furthermore, as I do go through this book, I want to teach you guys what a habit is and what are some awarenesses you can have to decide between weak habits and strong habits, or good and bad habits. So I'm going to read How to Develop Persistence, the 4 steps one more time so that you can really understand this, because this is so key. The necessary steps are 1, a definite purpose backed by burning desire for its fulfillment. So what is your definite purpose and what does that feel like to you? Number 2, a definite plan expressing continuous action. Do you have a plan? Is it sound? Are you taking action on it? And are you revising your plan so that it lines up to become more sound and actually give you the results you want? 3, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences. including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. Do you Are you open to negative influences in your world? Is there a lot of things going around you that don't look too well, that are going right into your mind and truly influence you and stopping you? Or do you close your mind tightly to all those influences? And what does it mean to you to close your mind tightly to negative influences? Okay, and finally, four, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. Do you have any alliances or masterminds in place? And what would that look like to you? If you don't have a mastermind yet, what would you want to do to get started in creating a mastermind? Okay, so, as Napoleon Hill said, and we read again, but the entire purpose of the 13 principles of this philosophy is to enable one to take these four steps as a matter of habit. These are the steps by which one may control one's economic destiny. They are the steps that lead to freedom and independence of thought. They are the steps that lead to riches in small or great quantities. They lead the way to power, fame, and worldly recognition. They are the four steps which guarantee favorable breaks. They are the steps that convert dreams into physical realities. They lead also to the mastery of fear, discouragement, and indifference. There is a all right, I'm going to end this chapter off right here. I'm going to put a bookmark in with there's a magnificent reward for all who learn to take these four steps. It is the privilege of writing one's own ticket and making life yield whatever price is asked. Wow. Okay, I am going to end the chapter off there. We're on page 234. We still got a little bit, two more stories of persistence to go. And now I want to leave it up for you guys, the audience, for some open Q&A. So I understand no one is on the live right now, but that's all right, because if you're watching the replay, I want to ask you some questions. And to start, I'd love for you to drop something in the chat of this video. One thing you learned about persistence, and what is one thing that you liked about it? So go ahead and drop that in the chat, because I really do want to make this a community and not only be teaching it as if I know everything about Think and Grow Rich, because truthfully, I don't know everything about it yet. So I want to make this a community discussion and give you guys a chance to speak up. So one thing you learned, one thing you like, drop that in the chat. I will share what I liked about persistence. I liked how it is a state of mind. It's interesting to think of persistence as a state of mind. And when I say that, it may sound weird, because what is a state of mind? And furthermore, this state of mind can be cultivated at any time through mastering the 13 principles of this philosophy. So, can you tap into yourself? Like, one time you've been persistent and that you've encountered this state of mind where you were just like, I know it's hard, but I'm going to keep going. Have you ever had that before? And what was that experience like? And can you bring that experience up again? Because if you did it once, you have proven to yourself that it's possible. So what would that look like moving forward in whatever goal or desire that you have, bringing up that state of mind known as persistence? And I want to move along and quiz you guys on a little bit of what we learned. So just forward thinking, I'm going to be creating workbooks for this to go along with each lesson so that you can have a visual aid and actually do some deep work in writing. But I want to ask you, what are the 4 key steps to developing persistence? I went over it and I mentioned it very clearly. I went over it twice in this chapter. So go back and let me know, what are the 4 key steps on persistence, on how to develop persistence? And then I also want you to ask yourself, what are the symptoms of persistence? What does persistence look like? And what constitutes of showing you lack of persistence? Because it's not about just grinding and working hard. It's about becoming aware of what does it look like when I am lacking persistence and how do I feel about that? So that's some questions that came up for me. I want to thank you guys for watching and subscribing. A couple of plugins that I got to end off the video. Follow me on Facebook and search up the group Think and Grow Rich with Michael Music. It should pop up as the third group. I know there's two mastermind groups already for Think and Grow Rich, but join me. I'm going to be studying this. I'm going to be working to get you guys the best material possible to really understand this book, because I heard stories from mentors that they've studied this book for 60 years and they study it every day. So there's something behind this book. And you also got to realize Napoleon Hill dedicated 25 years of his life to creating this book. So 25 years without pay. He had the faith to do that, and he persisted through those 25 years, no matter how many times the enemy tried to take him out. And by enemy, I'm talking about the devil, which is a whole nother subject. But yeah, that is my final thoughts on persistence. So I started a little late today. However, tomorrow the plan is to start again at 10 a.m. and to continue going over this material because this is some powerful stuff. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Chapter 9, Persistence. I think this was episode 12. And yeah, I want to keep going, keep staying persistent. It's nice teaching this material because it teaches me how to really apply it, because it's one thing when I read something, but it's a whole nother thing when I teach something. And so I'm really doing this more so for me. So yeah, that's that. Thank you guys for watching so much. I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m.